All right, exciting times. Everything underneath the deck, all the pressure treatment work is finito. It is time to start putting on all of the Avon Plastics product. I do want to give a huge shout out to Armadillo Decking, Avon Plastics, who is the parent company, for sending us all of that decking, because that is a lot of decking, and thanks to you guys for making sponsorships like this possible. So this is what the deal is. We are putting 2 rows of the walnut all the way around, picture framing everything, and this campfire board is going to be the main portion of the deck, and boy does it look nice. So Avon Plastics is the parent company of Armadillo Decking, TurboClip, and other products. Not them. Starborn, this is a partnership. They make screws that are the color of the boards that we need for the areas that we need to face screw, like the stairs right here. Kind of difficult to see with this beautiful sunshine, the different colors, but this is a walnut screw, which will be for the fascia. That goes in the front right there. And these are for the deck boards themselves right here. This is a walnut screw, and this is a campfire screw. Again, you can't really see much difference, maybe a little bit right there. And then the TurboClip system, this is what goes into this groove. This is a groove board right here. This is a ungrooved board, which will be for the edges. So the TurboClip system pops right in there and screws down so you don't have any fasteners in the main area of your deck. TurboClip works with all sorts of different composite decks, not just Armadillo. And we have the starter clip right here, which will be for the first board when we start this series. And right here we have the Armadillo joist cover, which I have set a couple up right there. They clip on top of the joist to prevent any premature rotting between the boards right there where water and debris could possibly get. All right, I'm super excited to start getting this stuff down. I hope you guys are too. Let's see what we can do in this beautiful sunshine. These Armadillo joist covers are pretty cool. They very easily snap in place over your typical 1.5 inch wide board that you're going to use for a joist, and they replace which would be a roll of tape that you would have to stick into place. Like I said, they quickly snap into place, and they are very easily cuttable with some tin snips, which I had to do over the longer areas because this is a 22-foot wide deck. There was overlapping joists, so I was able to cut them with tin snips and a utility knife to quickly snap off the overlapping pieces. And I actually used some outdoor T-Rex tape, which I've used before and has great UV protection to cover the seam to help prevent any water from getting down in there and rotting things out. And I wanted to do this deck right, so I did take the time to cut all of the little pieces for all of the blocking that we had to put in for the deck picture framing. Again, not a huge deal with the tin snips and a utility knife, but it did take quite a bit of time to cut everything down to its proper length. For the repeatable pieces, I did use a miter saw with a carbide tip blade, made a mark, so I was very quickly able to cut a bunch of pieces down. Just got to go slow here so that you don't catch that and pull your hand into the blade. Angles are hard, and I don't want to go through a bunch of boards messing up angles. We already messed up a couple of boards. So I have taken those scraps and kind of finessed my profiles to what I need to nicely get around all of these poles. Now, they don't have to be perfect because there is a skirt that is going to fall down over and cover any imperfections, but we like to do it pretty nice around here. So I have made a template for both sides of this gateway right here where the stairs are going to be. I'm going to go ahead and trace that out now that I have cut my 22.5 degree angles on here. I'm going to go ahead and trace that out, and we can cut it using the jigsaw. On the picture framing, we are using the Starbond painted screws. These happen to be called Chocolate, and they are for the Walnut Armadillo. One thing to be aware of when you're working with composite boards like this, you can get very long pieces, which is awesome, but they are extremely heavy and they are very, very flexible. So make sure you have a helper to hold up one end or the other so you can make sure your cuts are perfectly square or a nice mitered cut like I had to do around here to get the picture framing. And just like before, a template really, really helps, especially when you only have just enough boards like I did. I had to the board exactly what I needed for the picture framing, probably because I might have messed some of them up, but we ended up with exactly what we needed. So my recommendation would be to make a template, as it will save you some of those mistakes like I made. The width of the Armadillo deck boards was just right that we were able to do one board framing all the way around that covered the ledger board and the 4x4 posts. So we only had to make our cuts in one board and not both of them, which did save us quite a bit of time. As you saw, I had a bunch of kids out there helping me line up the board so that when I had those notches cut, we didn't snap off that very little 1.5 inch section that was holding the whole long board together. So we just carefully laid it in place and then added some of our Starborn screws, which are super cool. They have reverse threads right at the top, so it pulls down the debris and you get a nice smooth finish on the top, and with the painted screw you can barely tell that they're there. All the way down. Once we had that first picture frame board in place, the second one went much quicker because, as I mentioned before, we didn't have to cut all of those notches around the 4x4s or 4x6s or have to do the tricky miters. We didn't use a TurboClip to fasten the board because these are without grooves since they're the outside boards, but I used a TurboClip to make sure I had the proper spacing and then used the Starborn chocolate screws to face screw through the Walnut Armadillo boards all the way around, and it turned out great. We are ready to start putting our first grooved Campfire Armadillo deck boards into place, and to start them we're going to be using the Turbo starter clip, which I showed you guys earlier, and I'm actually using a TurboClip which has the exact 3/16 inch spacing that we want to give me the proper spacing for this starter clip. Now you got to have this TurboClip oriented the right way so that the longer grooves that dig into your joist are sticking out so that your starter clip can actually bump right into that. Then I'm just aligning it in the center of my joist and driving a screw. There is going to be a line right here where it transitions from boards this way to boards this way, and that is going to be super duper noticeable unless we make sure it's perfectly straight. So I'm going to be putting a string line so we know exactly where that needs to be so that we can align from this point back to the house. And if it's a little bit uneven under the ridges of the siding, that's okay. We want this to be perfect because you will see this all the way from over there. We spent the time to make sure that deck was really square, and it looks like we're a 1/16 of an inch off from one side of the 22-foot deck to the other, so I think we did all right. That being said, now we get to cut a whole bunch of these and then move them onto the deck and not have to measure, cut. So we got the tractor with the forks over here. We should be able to make some measurements, slide right over here. We only need to take off a couple of inches and slide right onto the deck and install. Mark all the ones on the top. Make sure it's where it belongs. Got it? Okay, we're 186 and 15/16. Got it? Then we can do this. Okay, guys. We are using a carbide tooth blade on our cordless miter saw. A minor point that surprised me a little bit is that the factory edge of this Armadillo decking, the factory end edges, are not exactly square to the sides. So if you have something that needs to be perfectly cut, make sure you trim an edge, make your measurement from that edge, and then cut to the length you need. You saw me spin the board there, and that is because I am tacking the factory edge underneath one of the curves of the siding, and we were able to put the edge that we cut up against our line and get a perfectly straight line. And here you can really see the beauty of these turbo clips. I do gotta say, having installed deck with and without the turbo clips, it does go down faster with these clips, as you only have one screw per joist of the deck. It goes down really fast and looks fantastic without the screw head showing. Ethan and I cut down a bunch of boards and got started installing relatively quickly with the aid of the turbo clips. Ethan was able to feed me the turbo clips and drills that I needed to keep ourselves moving relatively quickly. Then my brother John showed up, which helped out more because he is able to wield around some of these bigger boards. And we moved quickly along onto the section of the deck which changed directions. As you can see, the Armadillo deck boards changed directions, and this is going to be the open area of the deck that is not covered by the pergola. As you can see, the decking does go down pretty fast with the turbo clips. We are able to push most boards into place. You had to persuade a few of them with your boot, and then if you really was serious, you were able to use a hammer with no issues. Just make sure you use a scrap piece of the Armadillo decking so that you don't crack off any of the grooves where the turbo clips install. We are very quickly working our way over into the diagonal staircase which goes down into the yard. Now, we started trying to cut everything to its proper length, and that just didn't work. We weren't able to get a consistent line on the opposite side of the deck. So what we did was we cut all of our miters, we laid them in place, and then we made sure we spaced properly using a turbo clip, not fastened, but just using it to space things out again. And then I was able to strike a line and cut all of the boards to length at the same time using the circular saw, which I made sure was to the proper depth so I didn't damage anything underneath. We cut them down, and as you can see, they popped down into place, and we were ready to go with a perfect line over the diagonal and on the opposite side of these boards, and it looks awesome. Our last board did need a little bit of trimming, which I expertly did right behind the 4x4 pole, so you can't see what's going on, but my brother was able to kind of pull the board as I was cutting so that I was able to stay perfectly steady and get a nice straight line. This was the last one. It was a little bit tricky to get into place as we couldn't get a good purchase on the board, but we were able to tap it into place, and then this one does have to be face screwed at least on this side that we're walking along to make sure it stays in place. These boards are not exactly in line, and in my book, this is not 10 out of 10 work right here, so we're going to fix it. That is more like it right there. Looking fine. I don't think I have showed anyone exactly what the design was as I started, but here is a pan through of the design, and here is a pan through as we stand today. We have a lot coming up with the pergola. I've gotten a lot of questions of how we interface to the house, so make sure you guys subscribe, and we'll see you next time.